Hello everybody, it's Numa here. I hope everyone's having a fantastic day. I know I am. I have been spending my day thinking about the metaverse, which isn't very exciting, but when I thought about it in the big picture, which we're going to talk about today, it became very exciting because the metaverse is basically a reflection. It's a imitation, you could say, of what we already are experiencing. So I wanted to talk first about what the metaverse is. The metaverse is a digital immersive world that is supposed to be the next step in the evolution of the internet, where we will basically be where we have like a Zoom call now and we look at the screen. In the future, we'll be immersively in that call, where it will be like we're all in the same room and we'll have an avatar self that's in that room. And that's pretty cool. And there's other things you can do in the metaverse, like you can buy land and build houses, and I guess there'll be cities, and it will just be like a place that will continue to exist even when we're not necessarily in it. So it's a meta, beyond or next to world, next to this world kind of thing. So it's basically just like the internet or cyberspace. It's basically just a digital replication of the world that we're already in. And I wanted to introduce something that I don't know if people are familiar with, and that is that as humans, we are already part of a field that is interconnected completely. So we're part of a field, not the internet, but another field that is completely and totally interconnected all the way through their entire species and through the entire universe, actually. And in this field, we're sharing information. We can tap into that field at any time, and we can gather information. We can learn things. We can download information. We can create things. In fact, everything that is manifest in the physical world comes out of the field. And so there's a lot we can do within that field. But the imitation of that field would be like the metaverse. And what I wanted to liken it to is like mushrooms. And if you see a mushroom in the forest, you're going to notice that there's going to be a mushroom over there and a mushroom over there, and it will look like they're all kind of separated because there's just mushrooms all over the place. But if you go under the ground, you're going to see that there's a whole mycelium of mushrooms. And I highly recommend a movie called Fantastic Fungi, which I'm going to put a link in the description. It is so good. And in this movie, Paul Stamets is one that made the movie, and he's phenomenal human being. And he's the leading mycologist in our country, I believe, or probably internationally. And this movie just goes into the interconnectedness of these mushrooms, and that there's a whole mycelium underneath the earth of these mushrooms that will go for sometimes hundreds of miles, and they're communicating with each other. And if there's like a fire in one part of the forest, they'll communicate it through the it's like an internet of mycelium, and it will go for, they can communicate all the way through, and it's just so powerful. And so so these mushrooms, the little one that's sticking up above the ground, if it's aware of itself as connected to this whole mycelium, it's a very happy little mushroom, because it's like, I'm part of this whole, and this isn't all me. And if the strong winds come, or if somebody walks through the forest and steps on me, it's not the end of the world, because I'm actually connected to this huge, big mycelium under the ground. It's almost like one big mushroom with all these little parts that stick up. And so if that same mushroom didn't know that, and that mushroom thought that all it was the little part that's sticking up above the ground, then it would be a very different situation for that mushroom, because that mushroom would be sitting there above the ground, looking around, feeling like, wow, I'm all by myself. Where are all the other mushrooms? I'm totally alone in the winds and the rain, and if someone steps on me, I'm dead. And that mushroom would feel so disconnected and so alone, and it would wonder how it could even be connected, because it might see other mushrooms all the way across the forest, but it would have no way to get there. It can't move. And how's it going to communicate? Can't holler, it can't do anything. And so that poor little mushroom would feel so disconnected, so alone, so sad. And so in the same way as humans, we are legitimately always connected to this field, and not just connected, we're an integral part of the field. We actually emerge out of the field. We are an extension of that field. And when we're aware of that, then like the mushroom, we feel really good, because we're connected to our true nature, and we realize that this 3D part of ourselves that we access through the five senses is just a small part of what we are, and we feel ourselves connected to this whole, and we're able to bring in information, download information, connect to different ideas, and connect to, because you can connect to anything within the field that you want. And that field is also the space of infinite possibility, and out of that space comes all things. Everything in the physical is created out of that space. In fact, you could even think of the physical as an extension of that place, like a extension of, like a ray of the sun from the sun, like a sunbeam from the sun. Or the way that it works is because all things are vibration. And so in the field, the vibration for humans becomes finer and finer and more fine. And basically the vibration can go back to so fine, where it's basically comes from a basic urge or an intention, and then it becomes a little bit less fine, and eventually the vibration makes it all the way to the place that it becomes crystallized. And that would be the place that we call physicality. That would be 3D reality. And 3D reality is dependent on the five senses in order to understand itself or to navigate. And so in order for somebody in 3D to be able to connect to the field or connect to those other aspects of itself, the other parts of the sunbeam all the way back to the sun, then we have to raise our vibration. The physical being has to raise its vibration so that it can feel itself in higher vibration, and then can feel that field, because that field is a higher vibration than we are in physicality. That doesn't mean it's a better vibration. It just means it's a higher vibration. It's a more refined vibration. And then we're in the physical, we're not able to detect those five vibrations with the sun, but we are able to access that vibration through meditation and prayer and other methods that help us to raise our vibration. And so just like the mushroom, when we recognize and we remember that we are a part of this higher vibration and this mycelium that connects us all through the entire species, through the past and into the future, and all the way out into the earth and the universe and the galaxy, then what happens on the inside of all of us as 3D five sense beings is then we feel ourselves connected, and we feel free, and we feel happy and satisfied, because that's our nature. And then we're not afraid if somebody comes and quite steps on us like the mushroom. We're not afraid, because we know that we are part of this whole, and we'll just pop up somewhere else just like the mushroom. And when we're in that place, we also are able to tap into anything that we want and receive information, just like the internet. It's actually our natural internet. So we actually have inside of us, as a species, an internet. Just like the mushrooms have an internet, we have an internet too. And the one that we use when we pick up our phones is just it's an imitation of the one we have inside, because most of us haven't learned to navigate the one inside. But it's just an imitation, and it's never going to replace what we actually are. And as we come into the awareness of our true selves, we're not going to need any machines to imitate what we are, because we don't need a machine to decode, because that's all the computer is, or our phones are, is they're just decoding information and translating it. But we wouldn't need anything to do that, because we would do it ourselves, because we are part of that field, so we don't need a translator. And then the other thing within that field is, as we learn to work with it, we also learn to create out of that field. And so we learn how the process works, from going from super fine vibration all the way into crystallized form. And we learn ourselves to actually create our lives out of that information that we can gain on how to navigate that field. And so the lives that we live right now, all of us, every single aspect, from our physical body to our homes and our cars and our friends and our mental states and our traumas and relationships and all these things, are reflections of our vibrational self. And so but most of us are creating those things, that reflection of ourselves, out of default, because we don't realize that we have that power, and we haven't learned to refine our intention and our alignment, so that what comes out of us and what we manifest, crystallize into 3D doesn't always match what we want it to, because we haven't learned to navigate properly. So as we learn to work within that field, we then are able to be the creators, the deliberate creators of our lives, which is so amazing. And that's really our nature. That's what we're here for. But if we are disconnected or we're unaware, we're actually never disconnected, but if we're unaware of ourselves as these interconnected beings, if we are unaware of ourselves as being a part of this field, then what happens is that we're easy to manipulate, because just like the little mushroom we feel on the surface, we are scared and we feel disconnected and we feel alone, we feel vulnerable, and we're needy and we're hungry for somebody to help us and to give us some context and to give us some fulfillment. And so then, going back to the mushrooms, if you can imagine that that little mushroom is sitting there above the surface and is feeling so lonely and doesn't know it's connected, and then another little mushroom comes by, some billionaire mushroom, and gives it a little screen, which works as a mirror also, and that little mushroom looks in the mirror and says, wow, look at that, there's all these other mushrooms out there, and I can see them through the screen, and hi, and they're like waving, and you're really seeing it's really seeing all the mushrooms behind it, because it's like a mirror, but it feels connected because at least they can see each other and everyone can like wave, and that's cool, and that just feels like it helps to remedy the sadness and the disconnection of the poor little mushroom. But it doesn't really help. The mushroom still feels isolated and disconnected. It just has it's like when you're really hungry and somebody gives you like M&Ms to eat and it kind of makes you feel sick. It's kind of like that. That poor little mushroom is like really hungry for like connection and satisfaction and to be connected to its true self, but it's given kind of this really cheap kind of substitute, and it's a little sick from it, but it's all it has. In the same way with us, we have been programmed for a really long time, and in our society, we're programmed to believe that all we are is this three-dimensional self that is able to experience itself only through the five senses. And this is the hardened fact of what we are, and anything else is just make believe and has nothing to do with us. But what that does when we believe that is it causes us to be unaware, and so in a sense cut ourselves off from the truth of who we are. And so like that mushroom, what it does is it makes us very susceptible to propaganda, to being sold things we might not need, to suggestion, to all kinds of things. And so then if someone gives us a little screen and says, look, now you're connected, you can see your friends, you have Facebook, or you have your messaging app, or you have whatever, like you could be connected, then we eat that up because we're hungry and we're like, wow, I'm so lonely. I don't want to be lonely anymore. I want to be connected to my friends. I want to be connected to people. And so it becomes really a big part of our lives, and in some ways we get really addicted, and we think that's our nature, and in some ways it will move us further from our nature because we're focused on it and we're not going in and we're not finding out what it is that we're trying to replace. And so it becomes it's very, very important for each one of us as humans. If we want to be sovereign and we want to be free and we want to be happy, we have to know our connectedness. We have to know that we are a part of this field, and that in fact all of our empowerment comes from that knowing and comes from our being connected to it and aligning with it and living from it and through it, and in fact creating our lives from that. It's the most important part of who we are. Just like the little mushroom, if the little mushroom is aware of itself as this mycelium connection under the ground, if somebody brings it a little screen and shows them a little mirror reflection of all their little mushroom friends, it can be fun. The mushroom might be like, yeah, that's cool, and maybe play with it for an afternoon. It's like a fun toy for a little bit, but it's not gonna be that important, and the mushroom will probably get distracted or lose interest pretty quick because it's pretty pale in comparison to the reality of what that mushroom is, which is this vast, like hundreds of mile interconnected masterpiece of information and brilliance. And so, just be like a doll, maybe they'd throw it away. And the same with us. If we're connected to the truth of who we are, and somebody presents us with an external metaverse or even an internet or a phone or any kind of technology that's outside of us, then it will seem really fascinating. If we're disconnected, it will seem very fascinating. But if we're connected, then it doesn't seem that fascinating because we realize that it's just like a little toy. If it helps, cool. But if it doesn't, well, then we don't need it because we're already whole. We're fine. We don't need it. We're really connected. And so then we can put it aside. And with that awareness, we're able then to look in And as a supplement to this talk, I created a meditation today. It's a guided meditation vision journey into our internal metaverse, where I create a space for all of us to meet together, and all the people that will do the meditation, whenever you do it, time is an illusion, and in the field there is no time. So whoever does it and whenever you do it, we will together experience each other, and we're all going to meet there. And I'm excited to try this with you all. And I'd love everyone's comments to see how it goes, and if you felt like you were there, and if you felt like you saw me and other people that are listening to this right now. That would be really cool. So I'm gonna put that, or I'll post that also after this talk. So they'll both be on there together. So please listen to it and let me know what you think. And I hope that you enjoyed this talk. And mainly, I hope that what you take from this talk is that under no circumstances will any of us let anybody convince us that we are only the little mushroom above the ground. But I want, and I hope, and I pray, and I just, like, with all of everything that I am, I ask that you please allow yourself to remember the truth of who you are, and allow your vibration to rise, and to feel yourself connected to the infinite and infinite and interconnected whole of all things, where all information and the truth of who we are, and the soup of infinite vibration, where it all lives and where all things come from. Let yourself remember that that's who you are, and let yourself connect to that, and let yourself connect to that every single day, so that you can always remember who you are and never be afraid of getting stomped on like the little mushroom in the forest, but just always living in your sovereignty and in your power. So that's what I got today. Thank you so much for listening. And as a last thought, join with me in this force for love as we move forward in the world out of egoic consciousness, believing ourselves to be the little mushroom above the ground, into love consciousness, knowing the truth of who we are, our interconnectedness with the entire universe and with each other, and the vastness of our nature and our sovereignty and creative power as human beings. Thank you so much love.